Hello there and welcome to Brian Lomax Movie Talk. I'm Brian Lomax, and to celebrate the forthcoming release of Tim Burton's 17th feature film as director, I'm going to be counting down my top 10 Tim Burton movies. Now, just before we start, I'd just like to run down a few things about my relationship with Tim Burton's movies. I've been a long-standing fan of his. He's the reason I became a really big Batman fan. He's the reason I went through a Susie and the Banshees stint during the mid to late 90s. Although in recent years I do feel like his films have declined in quality somewhat. I am looking forward to Big Eyes, his forthcoming release, primarily because Amy Adams is in it, but I think the fact that Johnny Depp isn't in it and it looks quite different to a lot of Tim Burton's other stuff. It doesn't look quite as dark. There's a lot more colour in there. I am looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to seeing if this is a revitalisation of Tim Burton's career. I became a fan of movies from a very young age. I remember films like Gremlins and Ghostbusters, Highlander, Critters, that really made an impact on me when I was young. But it was the films of Tim Burton, films like Edward Scissorhands and his Batman films, that from an early age I first started to notice the input that a director has. I started to notice the style. It was Tim Burton's movies that first made me want to be a director, made me realise that actually the film is a director's creative vision. It's made by many people, it's a team effort, but it's the director that drives it, and it's the strength of a director or the weakness of a director that can really sink a film. So it's that impact that Tim Burton had on my life as a moviegoer that really makes me want to take a look at his career, take a look back at his career and do this top 10 countdown. So let's begin. Number 10, Alice in Wonderland. Alice in Wonderland isn't a great film by any stretch of the imagination, but it is visually a treat. It gives a typically wacky performance by Johnny Depp and a really fine performance by Helena Bonham Carter as the Red Queen. While it has very many humorous moments and some quite wacky special effects, it is coming on the tail end of Burton's recent career, so it does fall into that trap of him kind of repeating himself, which is one of the reasons I feel that as a director he's gone a little bit stale in recent years. That being said, it is an entertaining film and I'd quite happily watch it again, but that's why it sits at number 10 on this list. Number 9, Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice really has a cracking central performance by Michael Keaton. He's a force of nature and he really does bring life to this crazy character of Beetlejuice. The film is full of inventive visuals, particularly with the claymation stuff, which by today's standards looks a little bit dated, but you can still see what Burton was going for. This film is full of ideas, full of wacky jokes, very macabre as well in its aesthetic, but it's still a very entertaining film. Winona Ryder is in this too, and she's pretty much the template for most of Burton's leading ladies to come. She's very dark, very dour, very gothic. I first saw this film when I was 9 years old and it was on television, and it left quite an impression on me as a young boy, but it's deals with death in quite a humorous way, as Tim Burton often is prone to do. He always takes the macabre and anything to do with death and turns it into a positive, and kind of takes anything that's living and almost makes that the thing that should be an outsider, makes that the thing that is a bit weird. And this film really brings those ideas together, and it's very early on in Burton's career. Number 8, Frankenweenie. Despite the rather ridiculous title, Frankenweenie is a very touching, very heartfelt film. It again deals with death, but in this case the loss of someone close to you. It follows this little boy who loses his dog and then decides in Frankenstyle fashion to bring him back to life. This is perhaps Burton's most creative film for a good long while, probably about 15 years to be honest, and it's really the first step out of that, as I say, this kind of quagmire that he's got stuck in, this rut that he's got stuck in, where he's not really making the kind of films he used to make. And I want him to build on this with Big Eyes. I liked Frankenweenie. It reminded me of the classic Burton, the good stuff he used to put out at the beginning of the 90s. So with any luck, this, like I say, is the road to recovery, so to speak. There's a lot of humour in this film. Again, macabre humour, rather dark humour, but I love all the little references. Dracula, Frankenstein, Gremlins, Godzilla. There's just loads of stuff in there, and Burton has never kept it a secret that he loves these films. He loves Hammer horror, and it really shows in this film. This film is a love letter to those films, and it is very respectful of those films in the best possible way. Which brings me to the next film on my list, another love letter to the old Hammer horror films. Number 7, Sleepy Hollow. For me, this is probably the last really good pairing of Johnny Depp and Tim Burton. I like Depp's performance in this. He's very funny, very wimpish. He's really a cowardly character, and he plays it very well, plays it very dry. There are some real genuine scares in this film too, some that really made me kind of jump out of my seat when I saw it in the cinema, but it's very entertaining. I love the production design on it, very dark. And I really like Christopher Walken's Headless Horseman. I like the design of the character. I like how they've utilised him. It also has a kind of feel to it that I would expect from a Sir Arthur Conan Doyle story. It has that detective quality about it, the Sherlock Holmes kind of feel about it, although this is more of an inept, bumbling Sherlock Holmes. Number 6, Ed Wood. Yet another pairing between Depp and Burton. This one sees Depp playing famous film director Edward D. Wood Jr. Famous because he was perhaps the worst director of all time. Depp attacks this role with all the glee of a giddy schoolchild, and it really works when it shouldn't. It could come off as really cartoonish, and to some extent it is cartoonish, but as I say, it works with the black and white aesthetic that Burton's using, and the period set in which this is set with the 1950s horror films, and particularly the style of films that Edward D. Wood Jr. used to make. This really does work, and it all comes together when perhaps it shouldn't. Burton made this film at the height of his career, coming off the back of 2 Batman films, 2 very successful Batman films, and also Edward Scissorhands. It really shows because this film seems very personal, a very personal film for Burton, and one that perhaps a director of a smaller stature wouldn't be able to get away with making. And the writers from this film have actually done his most recent one that's coming out, Big Eyes, which again gives me a lot of hope for that film. Number 5, The Nightmare Before Christmas. Now, Burton didn't actually direct this film. That honour went to renowned stop-motion director Henry Selick, who's also responsible for films like Coraline and James and the Giant Peach, and his input into this film really shows. That being said, this has got Burton's fingerprints all over it. He came up with the characters, he came up with the story, and he produced the film, so he put all the pieces into play. So he really is the creative energy that drove this film. And with a character like Jack Skellington, this film became a cult classic, an instant cult classic, and it still lives on today. It's a really great film. It's a really great children's animation, very dark, as some of the best children's films are. The songs in The Nightmare Before Christmas are absolutely brilliant. It's possibly some of Danny Elfman's best work, and the animation is stunning, absolutely meticulous. The attention to detail by Selick is just beyond comparison. Now, if Burton had have directed this film, it would be much higher on this list, possibly in my number 2 spot. That being said, because of Selick's input, I can't completely class this as purely a Tim Burton film, which is why it gets a little bit lower on this list. Number 4, Big Fish. Big Fish is a film about the relationship between a father and his son. And it's worth noting that Burton lost his own father shortly before making this film, so this film is a very personal effort for him. And as is often the case with Burton, the more personal his films are, the better they are. This is a really great film, and it stirs up many emotions in me. While it can be a little bit episodic because of the nature of it, the way it's told, it's still a really great film. Billy Crudup plays his role as the son in a nicely understated way, and I always buy his reactions to things. I always buy the relationship between him and his father, played by Albert Finney. And this film also has a completely different colour palette to what we're used to seeing with Burton. There's a lot of real bright blues and bright yellows and just really bright, vibrant colours. Gone are the dark hues that we usually see with him, and I really like it. I think it suits, and I'd like to see him do more of this kind of film. Number 3, Batman. I'm a huge Batman fan personally, and the reason really it all started with this film. It came on to television in the UK during Christmas of '91, and that's when I watched it. I taped it off television and it really stuck with me. I must have watched it at least 2 or 3 times a week throughout 1992 up to the release of Batman Returns, and this really captured my imagination. I loved this film as a young boy. I still love it now, although the effect of it has kind of worn off somewhat over the years, but that's probably due to the amount of times I actually saw it. But yeah, I love it. I think the Joker, played by Jack Nicholson, is larger than life, and I like the dark, brooding presence that we see in Michael Keaton as Batman, and this film really changed the landscape of blockbuster movies. It really is easy to forget the impact that this film had. When this came out, there was literally Batman merchandise everywhere. You could not go through a town centre without seeing like all kinds of merchandise, caps, t-shirts, cards, just everything. It was just bonkers. If they could stick a Batman logo on it, they would, and it was because of this film. All that stuff aside, the film itself is still solid. It's a very solid film from the 80s. It's one of my favourite films from the 80s, and it really just it doesn't date because of the setting, because of the wonderful production design by Anton Furst, who sadly committed suicide after this film, although he did win an Oscar for this as well. Being a Batman fan, however, I can look back on this film and say that as a Batman fan, this isn't really a Batman film so much as it's a Burton film. If you look at it from that respect, I think you'll enjoy it more. I think you'll get more out of it. But if you go into this as a Batman fan looking for a Batman film, then I think you'd be better suited to the Christopher Nolan stuff. Number 2, Batman Returns. So with the success of Batman, the monumental success of Batman, Tim Burton basically got to do whatever he wanted, which in many ways for Batman fans was a bad thing, but in many other ways for Burton fans it was a very good thing, because he got to make Batman more personal to him. This film is very much a Burton film through and through. It just so happens to have characters such as Batman in it. This film has a lot of the hallmarks from what you would expect in a Burton film, particularly the dark aesthetic, the Danny Elfman music, the social commentaries on commercialism, like the commercialisation of Christmas in this film. It has outsider characters. All 3 of the main characters are all outsiders in one way or another: Batman, Selina Kyle, Catwoman, and the Penguin. In 1992, when this came out, I just went mad for this film. I went crazy for this film. And as I said at the start of this video, it was Tim Burton it was his films that kind of made me want to be a director. It made me take notice of the input of a director, and that really started with this film. It was just unlike anything I'd ever seen before, and because of that it just made me take notice of certain things from the side of filmmaking. And while I love Anne Hathaway in The Dark Knight Rises, and I love Christopher Nolan's trilogy probably a lot more than these films, there will only ever be one Catwoman for me, and it is Michelle Pfeiffer. And so we finally reached the number 1 movie on this list. My favourite Tim Burton film, Edward Scissorhands. If Tim Burton is going to be remembered for one film, it will probably be this one. This is his most personal, I think, that I've seen from him, and it's probably the best pairing between him and Depp. It is the best pairing between him and Depp. He saw something in Johnny Depp that no one else saw at the time. Johnny Depp was coming off the back of 22 Jump Street. He was a bit of a heartthrob. No one really saw him as an actor, so to speak. But Burton did, and he connected with him on a really profound level, a level that would span their entire film careers afterwards, as they just keep working with each other. And it really is a great understated performance by Depp. He's very childlike, he's very innocent in this role, which is what it requires. And the story is it's a modern retelling of Beauty and the Beast. If you sit this film alongside the Disney's animated Beauty and the Beast, they're are a lot of similarities to it, particularly in the structure of it, and certainly in the way the film plays out towards the end. They're very similar. But this really is a great film, and the visuals are absolutely stunning. The stuff in the snow when Edward Scissorhands is making the ice sculpture is just really beautiful. Danny Elfman's score really caps it off, it just really enhances the beauty of those scenes. And I really like Winona Ryder in this film as well. She's a real girl next door quality about her in this, and just everything about this film is just classic. It will go down in history as probably Tim Burton's best film, and I can't ever see him making better than this. But when it's this good, that's not really an insult. So there you have it. That's my list of top 10 Tim Burton movies. That's just for me, of course. But tell me what you think. What's your top 10? What are your favourite Tim Burton films? Do you even like him as a director, or can you not stand anything he's done? Comment below and let me know. And until next time, thanks for watching. Big Fish is a film about... What is it about? I don't know.